Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
I don't know why my voice went up so many octaves. Like it normally goes up a little bit, but that one was like extra
You're
up there.
inspired by all those Wicked commercials. You're like, I'm Jacqueline.
What if we just started every podcast like that? Also, cannot wait for Wicked. So hopefully Millie enjoys it in theater. Because the first time kids like don't like things as much as like once they've seen it and then it's like they become obsessed and then they love it.
hmm
So I'm hoping that she will enjoy it in theaters the first time.
Yeah, my only beef is that I feel like they're already doing the same thing to the second one that they did to the first one for me, and that is
Mm,
using the key song in every single commercial there is. So then
yeah.
once you get in the theater, you're like, "Yep, I've heard this
Hmm.
about 30 times a day."
Yeah.
So,
You don't get that
you
like
know,
wow factor. It's like,
yeah, because that wicked last the Defying Gravity last note would have been incredible if
hmm.
I hadn't already heard it in every Dunkin', Verizon, every commercial, Target, all of
Right.
them. It was like, okay, well,
Yeah.
knew that one was coming.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. Our friend Tiffany did send me where they have the Glinda and Elphaba little people, and I'm like, Millie doesn't even play with little people anymore, and I still have to get these little people. So,
yeah,
but they are very
yeah,
cute. So,
yeah. Chili's has a Glinda and Elphaba margaritas, I'm pretty sure.
oh,
So,
nice, nice.
yeah.
It is funny though because she actually was playing with one of those little people the other day, and it's just like a little. I think it was a Barbie one actually, but she's like wearing a pink dress, but she kept calling her Glinda. But I'm like, that's Barbie, but close enough.
You know,
It
it's whatever
works,
you want it to be.
right? It's the beauty of imagination.
Yeah.
It is very cold here today, which is unusual for Tennessee. It's early November and it snowed today, which I can't
Yeah.
remember the last time I saw snow in early November. Probably even in November in general, but definitely early November.
Yeah, it's been a while. I feel like normally we don't get snow until like January,
Yeah,
but
same.
it's snowing today, freezing, and it's supposed to be 70 on Saturday. So if you're asking how my sinuses are,
Right?
terrible.
Yes, all
Terrible.
over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I had a story that I was going to tell for the opening, and I forgot it. So it must not have been
Well,
important.
it's also been a while since we recorded a regular episode because we
Yeah,
did
the
like a
bonus.
two-parter at one time and then we recorded the bonus. So it's been like a month since we did like a regular episode because I was thinking about that. I was like, I don't think my perk of the week was ever that my baby turned 1 and that we had her birthday party because we haven't recorded a regular episode since then, which I'm like, now it's weird for that to be my perk of the week because by the time you hear this, she's going to be like 18
It's going to
months.
be
But
Thanksgiving.
so yeah, so that happened and that was a good time and
hmm
crazy because I feel like she was just born yesterday, but here we are.
Yeah, I do have um a story of how luck never goes my way. And that is
You?
me, right? I know. Me and Kevin went to the Tennessee Oklahoma game, which was obviously a good game, but we lost, so it sucked. So
Hmm.
um I'd already asked at some point during the game, I'm like, Kevin, can we get McDonald's after the game? And he was like, yes, of course. And I was like, awesome. Not gonna eat here at the stadium. I'm gonna get cheap McDonald's.
Yep.
And so then we're walking back to the car because we decided to not walk all the way home since it was going to be midnight. Just walk back downtown to the car. And I was like, or I could just DoorDash Taco Bell. So then by the time we get home, our food is there. Two birds, one stone. And it got sent to the wrong Taco Bell. It
Oh
got sent to the
no.
Taco Bell on Western Avenue that I'm convinced never sells anything because anytime I've been in that drive-through, it does not move ever. So we get stuck in the parking garage. Like we're stuck sitting there. And I'm like, oh, how is our food about to be there? And he's like, it keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. I look at the history and I see that two dashers have already canceled on this order. And I'm like, okay. So then I messaged the current dasher. I'm like, what's going on? He was like, the line is back out into the street and we're all just sitting here.
Oh my
I
gosh,
was
that's
like, okay, cool.
crazy.
So I said, cancel it. Don't worry. Just cancel the DoorDash. And Kevin goes, let's just drive to Taco Bell. I was like, okay. Mind you, it is 1:15 in the morning at this point. So I said, let's drive to Taco Bell. We get to the Taco Bell. line is to the street. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know
Everyone
what?
is drowning their UT football sorrows in Taco Bell.
Well, I was obviously that person who was like, what is everyone doing up right now? As I'm up right now trying to get fast
Right.
food. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let's try the McDonald's because it's
Mhm.
probably quicker. So we drive to McDonald's. We pass a Checkers, line out to the road. We get down
Wow.
to McDonald's, line around the building out to the road.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's
I went
crazy.
home and I had a chomp and I went to bed.
That's so sad.
I was very sad. I just wanted some like because I hadn't eaten since like
Yeah.
4 p.m. at the tailgate. And now
Hmm.
it's like I watched the time change go back. I watched it go 1 a.m. to 1 a.m. I watched it go from 1:59 to 1 a.m. And it was just, it was
That is
very sad. I just wanted
disappointing.
some food. And
Yeah.
then Kevin like opens the fridge. He's like, "What we got?" And I'm like, "Nothing." Because it's not Taco Bell or
Right? Like
McDonald's.
nothing good. We have nothing good.
So that's careful if you're trying to get fast food at
Yeah.
1:30 in the morning. The line, I guess, will be out to the road.
Like I said,
So,
I bet everyone's out there trying to get their
yeah.
post-game fast food. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a bummer, but
Yeah, that
I
game was a bummer.
I guess I save money and calories by just eating a little tiny jalapeno chomp and going to
And
sleep.
going to bed. All right. Well, on that note, I guess we're good
I guess
to
we can get into it. We haven't recorded
dive
in like a
into
month
this.
and I don't think we have any updates. So,
Yeah, none that I've seen at least. Maybe my
I
head is
mean,
just
I
in the
know there are
oblivious.
updates, but I have not written any of them down and I don't remember our
Perfect.
last update. So.
Me neither.
So, yeah, we'll get into this episode. Our first source was a People Magazine Investigates episode. It is season 6, episode 13, called Candy and Betty. The book Evidence of Love, A True Story of Passion and Death in the South by Jim Atkinson and John Bloom. A snapped episode, it's season 30, episode 15, called Candy Montgomery. And then we used a People.com article, an Investigation Discovery article, and an All That's Interesting article. So on Friday the 13th in 1980, 30-year-old Betty Gore was found brutally murdered in her home in Wiley, Texas. She'd been stabbed 41 times with an axe. So Betty Pomeroy grew up in Norrick, Kansas. So Norrick was a small town and kind of everybody knew everybody. The Pomeroys were a family of 5, so the parents were Bob and Bertha, and the children were Betty, Ron, and Richard. So Betty was the oldest, and Ron was 4 years younger, and then Richard was 8 years younger than her. So kind of she was 8 when the baby was around, kind of helped raise them, especially like they lived on a farm on the west end of Norrick, so it was kind of like everyone's helping each other.
Yeah.
So the farm was actually Betty's grandparents, and everyone in the family had a job on the farm growing up. And Betty would always take care of the house, and she would help cook a meal and helped a lot raising Richard. And he was like the baby of the family, so he was, the babies are always spoiled, they always get all the love. And the farm actually didn't have running water, and they had to use an outhouse. So it was a very old school style farm where you had to like run out to the outhouse. I don't think I would ever survive a cold winter night going out to an
Oh,
outhouse.
no. No.
So eventually, Bob bought a Standard Oil filling station, and the family moved up a bit. So they had a house now that had running water and a bathtub, which the kids just felt like was a luxury.
Wow. Right?
Like,
Absolutely after an outhouse.
yeah. Like, we don't have to go to the well to get the water for our bath. Like, what is this?
This is amazing.
So Betty was very involved in school. She was in choir and student council. She loved being around other people, and Betty was easy to get to know. She was caring and just had a warmth about her. So after high school, Betty attended Southwestern College, which is in Winfield, Kansas, only about an hour away from Norwich. And Betty wanted to become a teacher. Um, and Betty was like decent at math, but she did need some additional help once she got into higher level classes. So she met Alan Gore, who was helping her tutor, and Alan and Betty like started to like each other. Alan was a go-getter and really seemed to be like going places, and Betty was the first girl Alan had dated seriously, and he really cared for her. So Alan had grown up in Larned. I'm sorry, Kansas, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but it's 3 counties west of where Betty grew up. So kind of, they're both from Kansas. So Alan didn't grow up with a community like Betty did, and he actually started working at the age of 10 as a paid hand. So as he grew up, he would choose working over hanging out with friends or going to the movies. So we always just kind of had this like go-getter, working, I need to make money kind of mindset. So Allen played basketball, but he wasn't very good. And he was overall a good student. He was the second kid of five, and he was closest to his older sister, Beth. So she's actually the reason he went to Southwestern College, and he was able to pay for college with the money he'd saved from working, because back in the 1960s, you could do that. Um, unlike today.
Right. Work during the summer and all right, you got your next 2 semesters paid for. Great, you're good.
I always remember one of my teachers in high school told a story about when he went to college. His parents were like, you can either like live here and we'll pay for your college, or um, what was it? It was something where it was like he could choose between paying for rent or paying for his college, and he chose
Hmm.
rent because it like basically was like evened out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like where it was like this like easy comparison where it's like, yeah, we'll give you like $2,000 and that'll pay for your year at college.
Right. It's like great, sold.
Anyway, off the tangent. um, Alan majored in math and continued working nonstop while in college. So Betty and Alan fell pretty quickly, and Betty brought Alan home to meet her family. And Alan actually started picking up some shifts at the Standard Oil filling station because he kind of felt guilty for accepting the Pomeroy's hospitality and not doing anything in return. Everyone in her family said they were a little confused at her choosing Alan because they didn't think he seemed like her type, and they were like, he's kind of quiet, kind of like didn't really seem who they thought Betty would be with, but they were like, if she's happy, like we're happy. We're not gonna, judge who she picks. If she's happy, like. So Alan was actually able to avoid the draft due to a knee he'd busted when he played basketball, and Betty and Alan celebrated by looking for engagement rings. So Alan enrolled in graduate school at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas, and Betty made plans to transfer there in the spring. So she still wanted her teaching degree, and she wasn't going to let anything stand in her way. So even though she's going to kind of move with Alan, she's like, I'm not giving up on college. Like, I'm still wanting to get my teaching degree. So they lived on Alan's stipend and doing whatever other odd jobs they could kind of pick up just to help make it by. And they got married on January 25th, 1970 in Norwich. And they took a 2-day honeymoon to Hutchinson, which is 50 miles north of Norwich. So they then settled into Manhattan, Kansas. And between Alan's classes and research and Betty's jobs and classes, they really rarely saw each other. They were kind of always on the go, kind of just making ends meet. So Alan ended up getting a job at New Mexico State and Betty transferred there. So Alan was making good money, but they didn't have many friends. And Alan had to go on a 6-week business trip, and this was very hard on Betty. And according to the Evidence of Love book, Betty did have a one-night stand, and she did admit it to Alan, and they worked through it, and it never happened again. So just kind of putting that out there. So later they moved into a new house, and in the spring of 1973, Betty graduated from college. She was the first Pomeroy to graduate, so the whole family came to New Mexico to celebrate. And Betty's family said she seemed happy. She loved the climate in New Mexico. She loved the students she was working with. Like she actually seemed like very, very happy at this time in her life. So eventually, Alan decided to look for a different job and came across Collins Radio, which would later be merged with Rockwell International, and that was headquartered in Richardson, Texas. So Alan stopped by and was actually offered a job on the spot. So pretty nice. So they moved to Plano, which is a far out suburb of Dallas, but Alan wasn't really in love with this job either. Like something about whatever he was wanting to do, he wasn't really getting to do with this job. And around this time, Betty started having medical issues as well. Like it seemed like she was sick a lot and no one could really figure out like what was wrong with her. So that was really like affecting her mental health. And then she discovered she was pregnant. So not really great if you're having all these medical issues and now you're like, oh, and I'm pregnant.
Right. And also, here's a whole other host of medical issues to come.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's how we can't treat any of your medical issues because you're pregnant. And
Hmm.
she also had very bad morning sickness. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
didn't help anything either.
Hmm.
So after the first trimester, it did get better, and it was stated that Betty was struggling around this time just from pregnancy, sickness, not being around family, and she didn't have a permanent job at this time because again, they're like moving around a lot, so it's kind of hard to kind of get a permanent job. And they did have a baby named Elisa, and she was able to actually secure a teaching position, and so this kind of helps lift Betty's spirits. So Elisa was the first grandchild on Betty's side, so of course the family was very excited. But soon, Betty had some health ailments again and would go to the doctor frequently. The book almost kind of made it seem like, not that she was like a hypochondriac, but like she had to be going to the doctor like a lot
Hmm.
over a lot of symptoms.
Yeah.
She was also not signed back on at the elementary school that she'd gotten the teaching position at, but she did get a substitute teaching job at an elementary school in Wiley, and she was offered a permanent position soon. This is kind of when Betty's mental and physical health improved at this time. So I know also your mental health can really affect your physical health. So I don't know if her not being in a very good mental space also attributed to a lot of her medical
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah. I mean, like you can have very real physical symptoms from mental health problems. So, I mean, that would make a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Yeah. A panic attack does indeed feel like a heart attack.
Yes.
It does. Um, they feel quite the same. So Alan continued to have to travel long periods of time for work, which was hard on Betty, especially after having Elisa. So you're working a full-time job, you have a newborn, and now your husband's gone long periods of time.
Hmm.
And he did take Betty for 1 week to Switzerland, and they had a really great time. But then Betty kind of had to come home while Alan was staying there. And she really struggled with this, and he even called his boss to like beg to bring him home.
Wow.
So Alan was like, eek, okay, things are bad. Like that was his
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm cutting this work trip short. I gotta come home.
It's like this is kind of a
And
line that you're like, okay, something is
something must
yeah.
be really bad if she's calling my boss begging
Yeah.
him to bring me home.
Like
So
she really
Alan,
has to be having a hard time.
yeah. So Alan asked for a transfer to a job that would keep him in Dallas. So he started working for Texas Instrument, and they sold their Plano home and bought a house in Wiley. So just
Question.
yeah,
Is this the Texas Instrument, like the calculator company?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, because something comes up
Which
later that I was like, they did that? I thought they just made calculators. So I didn't know if
yeah,
it was the same company or not.
yeah. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think it would be way too weird for it not to be. But also,
Yeah.
Alan was like a mathematics major, so he was doing a lot
Yeah.
of like that kind of thing. So I would
Okay.
assume,
Okay. Yes, this does make sense. I'm just stuck on like, the like TI 89 calculators that,
yeah,
Anyway,
they were just building those, like,
that's it. Nothing else
yeah.
math related. They literally just made calculators. They weren't doing anything else.
I mean, probably, I don't know. I was gonna say probably today that's all they do, but are they out of business now because of iPhones?
Are we gonna have a bonus episode on Texas Instrument?
Let us know if you want that. We might do it.
Everyone's
We
like,
like to get a little
unsubscribe,
loosey-goosey.
unsubscribe.
They're like, "Oh my God, you guys are bored, aren't
They're
you?"
like, they've reached the end. They can't come up with anything else. They're done. They're cooked.
They're done. So, a little bit of history about Dallas in the 1970s. It was like really booming, especially in tech. And apparently the areas around Dallas then started to become known as the Silicon Prairie, which I think is hilarious and never knew that. So, one town in the Silicon Prairie is Wiley, which is where they chose to move. And they chose it because it felt more like a small town feel. And they felt like it would have like more security, like more like we know our neighbors. It kind of feels more like how they grew up. So Betty loved her job and tried really hard to make the kids feel welcome and excited for school. And her brother Richard said she would go out of her way to pick up on the kids who like might have a rougher home life and just try to give them extra attention. And Betty also signed up for a foster care program where she would temporarily help children. So the Evidence of Love book claimed, this is a claim here, I just want to make sure I'm quoting my source here, that Betty was awkward around children, even her own, which made it seem weird that she would sign up for this foster care program. But I'm like, she wanted to be a teacher. Like, how awkward can you be
Yeah.
if you like, because at one point she got a job with like middle school and she was like, no, 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 I want elementary school. Like, so how awkward can
Hmm.
you be if that's like your goal?
Yeah, that's a very interesting take.
Yeah. And I will say too, the book from the acknowledgments looks like it relies heavily on information provided by Alan, as well as someone else we will meet who is a suspect of the murder.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I also don't know from this book how much like non-bias information we're getting
Yeah. Yeah.
because you'll see why in a bit that it gets real messy. So the two people who gave information for this book are two pretty messy people. So,
Okay. So nothing like from like her family or anything like
no.
that. Okay.
No, and her family was on like the two episodes. And especially the People magazine investigates episodes where they were like she loved children. She like
Yeah.
people loved her. Like they spoke very highly of her that she was very warm and she loved kids and all this she would do to make kids feel welcome. So I also don't
Hmm.
know if that was them being like quit spreading lies about our Betty, you know.
Yeah. Because no one is out here like, oh, I'm weird around children and I'm going to be an elementary school teacher. Like, what? No one's
Yeah,
doing
and like she
that.
was excited to be a mom and like
Yeah.
was in like getting like foster care children and elementary school teacher. I'm like, if you're weird around kids or don't like kids, like you're not gonna do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was no Facebook then to brag about it, so it's like
No one even knows you're
you
doing
didn't
it.
have
It's
to.
okay.
Yeah. So Betty also became a very active member of the Lucas Methodist Church, and Betty helped put together programs for the church's youth group. And she really loved the social aspect of church and making friends. So through church, Alan and Betty met Pat and Candy Montgomery. So the Montgomerys also had a daughter around the same age as 6-year-old Elisa. And in 1979, Betty actually became pregnant again, and they had another daughter, Bethany. So by 1980, the Gores had integrated well into life in Wiley, and Alan still had to kind of go on a lot of business trips. They just weren't as long, and Betty is still not a fan, especially with two kids now. Like, a
Yeah.
lot going on.
That's a lot.
Um, so her family was in Kansas, so being alone with the kids and work was just really hard on her. So Alan had another business trip coming up on June 13th, and Betty was not happy about it because it was also a Friday. So she's like, "You're gonna be gone on the weekend. Thanks. Thank you." Um, but Alan and Betty were planning 2 weeks later to go on like a second honeymoon of sorts. So they were gonna go to Europe without the kids. So she was very excited about this. She was like, "Okay, I can get through this work trip, and then we're gonna go like gallivant around Europe and have like an actual honeymoon." And according to the Evidence of Love book, again, just quoting
Source,
my
source,
sources,
source. Well, here we are. Yes.
just because it's the only place I saw it. Betty was also stressing about him leaving and kind of all this because she was 2 weeks late on her period and was worried about her being pregnant again. Her first two pregnancies were pretty hard on her, and she was also scared it would like ruin their trip and mess up like her teaching schedule because, really like from what I read, they were like she tried to plan her second daughter to be like, let me have her in the summer so I'm not having to
Hmm.
like find a substitute and all of
Yeah.
that.
Which I feel like a lot of teachers do that. So,
Yeah, yeah. So she was like, "Oh my gosh, like if I'm pregnant now, this is when I'm gonna have my baby, and we're going on this
hmm.
trip, and now I'm not gonna be able to, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
sick the whole time because it's the first trimester."
Yeah.
Like, so Betty and Alan didn't really end on a good note before he left, but she was kind of calming down. Like he said she just kind of woke up and was just like flustered and frustrated, and I kind of get it. Like you're kind of dreading that he's leaving, and so you just wake up and you're just like not in a good mood.
Yeah.
Alan promised to call from the airport. So he left for work around 8 a.m. and then was going to be at the airport around 4:30 p.m. So he did call from the airport when he got there around 4:30, but no one at the house picked up and he's like, "Oh, she's probably just not home." So later that night, Alan called their friend Candy Montgomery, and he'd tried calling Betty several times but couldn't get a hold of her. So Candy told Alan that she'd driven to the Gore's house earlier that day to pick up a bathing suit for Elisa. So Elisa was spending the night with Candy, but she hadn't spoken to Betty after picking up like that bathing suit. So she was like, "I did stop by the house because Elisa wanted to spend the night again. She was gonna come swimming. That's the last time I saw her." And a delivery man also had a parcel service and rang around noon, but no one answered. So Alan's kind of confused, but he hangs up and he kind of goes to dinner with his colleagues because he's like, you never think worst case scenario. It's a house
Yeah.
phone. You don't have cell phones. So it's like she could be something could be going on and I don't know what
Hmm.
it is. So
Exactly. It's like, oh, she just like left and went somewhere. I mean, she went to the grocery store to pick up stuff. There's
yeah.
no, you have no idea of like tracking where someone is, and you're
Yeah.
just trusting that, oh, something happened and they just went out and I'll talk to
Yeah.
her soon.
Yeah. So after dinner, he tried calling again and there was still no answer. So now he's like, and so he waits 15 minutes, tries again, no answer. So now it's like 10 p.m. So he's like, she should be home, like the
Yeah.
baby, like this is getting weird. So he calls his neighbor, Richard Parker, and explains the situation and asks him to check on Betty. So Richard sees that the garage door is up and lights are on. He doesn't go knock on the door, but Richard is like, tells Alan this, and Alan's like, okay, will you please go knock on the door? Because why are the lights on? Why is the garage door open if no one's there? And Alan's like, knock the door down if you have to. Like, figure out what's going on here.
Hmm.
So Alan also called two more neighbors, including Lester Gaylor, who's a volunteer firefighter, to go with Richard. So Richard, Lester, and Jerry, who's the other neighbor he called, go to the house. So Lester tries the front door and it swings open, and they stepped into the foyer. So Richard and Jerry went down the hall to the bedroom and heard a baby crying, and it was Bethany, and she appeared to have been left alone for a few hours. So Richard takes the baby next door to his wife and Jerry and Lester to continue to search. So Lester goes in the kitchen and the laundry room, and then Lester opens the door to a utility room and finds Betty on the floor covered in blood and just the whole room covered in blood. So at this point, Alan is calling the house again, and Lester picks up and he's like, the baby is fine, but I do believe Betty is dead. And at that point, they were saying she'd been shot because that was their first, just with the blood, they were like, we think she's been shot.
Yeah, I mean, if you see like that much blood, I feel like that's kind of the first thing you would
Yeah.
think.
So Lester hangs up and calls the police. So the detective, Steve Deffabaugh, gets to the house, and by the time he gets there, there is media and a crowd of people. Like, there's just people everywhere. So he goes into the house and he saw the blood in the hallway, and so he starts to collect evidence, starting the utility room. So Betty was in the room, and her head was kind of like by the freezer, and there was a lot of blood that had started to coagulate. So half of Betty's face was actually just like destroyed, and she had wounds all over her body. And he's like, "This is clearly not a gunshot wound. Like this is brutal." Then on the other wall, there was an axe and it had blood all over the handle. So Steve said, looking at the body, you could kind of tell they were like chop marks. And Steve could also tell Betty had been moved at some point because there was a bloody footprint under one of her thighs. And the size of the footprint is actually quite small. So they're like, okay, this is either like a woman or someone young because it is such a small footprint. But this again isn't really making sense because they're like, this takes a lot of strength based on these wounds and the amount of wounds. Like, imagine swinging an axe 41 times. Like, that takes a lot of strength. So it's like not
Hmm.
making sense. So Steve continues to look for more clues and he looks at the freezer and he actually sees a fingerprint in blood. So after Steve collects evidence in the utility room, he turns to the bathroom and there was blood on the bath mat and some blood and lots of hair in the bathtub. So he's like, okay, so someone went in here to try and like clean up after whatever happened. So Steve then starts to look at the rest of the house. He goes to the master bedroom and sees some 35 millimeter film that had a $20 stuck in there. So he's like, I don't really think this is like a home invasion or robbery because why, like, what thief is just going to leave behind money? Like, wouldn't you be stealing stuff if this is the point? And then in the dining room, Steve saw a Dallas morning newspaper that had some blood spatters on it. And the newspaper was open to the movies page. And one of the films that had opened was The Shining. And this is a film based on a novel by Stephen King that involves an axe murder. So they're like, is this a coincidence? Is this inspired by the film? Like, what's going on here?
Kind of a weird thing, yeah.
Yeah. So the police contacted Betty's family in Kansas and even shared some of the brutal details. And the family believed Elisa and Bethany's safety was the most important. And remember, Alan is in like Minnesota or wherever he is on his business trip. So they get in the car and drive to Texas. And Betty's family think Alan is behaving a little odd and not really grieving how they thought he would. Like once he kind of gets there, they're like, he doesn't have a lot of emotion. He's just kind of reserved. So Betty's brother does mention it was odd, but he's also like, I mean, how do you know how someone will react when their wife is murdered? Like you can't predict how someone's going to act. So Betty's family tried to keep things as normal as they could for Elisa and Bethany, as well as help the police any way they could. So police were trying to fingerprint everyone to see if it would match the one that's on the fridge. So everyone in the community was speaking highly of Betty and just felt like perplexed. They're like, I don't understand. Like this is small town vibes. Like this doesn't the the quintessential this doesn't happen here. Um, so a couple days after the murder, the family received a phone call. So Richard answered the phone and a guy on the line said, I killed her, and hung up the phone. So Richard told the police and they designated Ron to be the person to pick up the phone next if it rang. So the family waits by the phone, and later that afternoon, the phone rings again. So Ron answered and started to ask questions to try and keep him on the phone. And the caller kept saying, like, he killed her and her daughters were next. So Ron was able to keep him on the phone for the 10 minutes the police needed to track the call because it did take like a full 10 minutes. So they're like, keep him talking, keep him talking.
Yeah, which is a long time.
That's a long time to be like,
Yeah.
okay, what are you saying? You're gonna kill her. Okay, yeah, what
Yeah.
next? Like, so it traced the call back to Terrell State Hospital, which is a mental hospital. So investigators drove to the hospital, but discovered that the man who made the call had never left the locked facility. So he didn't have access to a car, and the hospital was 50 miles away, so it wasn't him. Basically, it's the old days where you hear about this happening, you can look up their number on a phone book, and he's calling. So Terrell State Hospital blocked the number so it wouldn't happen again from anyone else. There was also a 5-year-old girl in the neighborhood who'd come around 9 a.m. the day of the murder, wanting to see if Elisa could play. She said she came to the door and she said she did see one person she recognized that day, and it was the mother of another one of her friends at school, Candy Montgomery, and she said she saw her leave around 11 a.m. So now investigators are like, okay, Candy, by her own admission, is the last person to see Betty alive that we know of. This little girl is placing her there. So we're gonna talk to her a little bit. So Candy tells them about that day. She took the kids to Bible school and she said it was a hot day, so she left vacation Bible school and then went to the Gore's home to pick up a bathing suit so Elisa could go swimming with them later. She said she left the church around 9:45 a.m. and got to the Gores around 10 a.m. Candy said she and Betty visited for a bit, but when she left, Betty seemed fine. Betty had been drinking coffee and sewing. They discussed what to do with the kids and even went outside to play with the Gores' two dogs. So Candy used the bathroom to fix her hair and told Betty about a new business she was starting up that was like wallpapering and painting business. And she left a business card on the coffee table. So Candy said she got Elisa's bathing suit while Betty got a towel from the utility room. And Betty also gave Candy some peppermint candy for Elisa to have in case she put her head underwater during the lesson. So Elisa didn't like to put her head underwater when she was swimming, so they did it as like a reward. Like, okay, well, if you put your head underwater, you get candy. So Candy said the whole visit took about 15 minutes. She said she was wearing a burgundy top, jeans, and wore blue tennis shoes that had a rubber sole. Candy then said she went back to the church around noon, and the rest of her day was pretty uneventful with the swim lessons and taking the girls to a movie. She didn't really add much info, so police took her fingerprints and sent her home, and she told investigators that her fingerprints may be in the home. And she said specifically she'd been in the utility room for the bathing suit and had to use the bathroom to comb her hair and wash her hands. But again, she's being very cooperative, so they're like, okay, we don't really like have anything to hold her on.
hmm So Betty's family took her body back to Kansas for a hometown funeral, and the whole town came out. Everyone told amazing stories, and clearly Betty was very loved. So back in Wiley, the medical examiner released the autopsy details, and it revealed that Betty had experienced extreme violence. There were 41 axe marks on Betty, and 28 of them were in her head, which is just horrific.
Hmm.
So, because of this overkill, the medical examiner believed that this was not a random attack, but someone who knew her. They also believed that this motive was just very primal and jealousy. Like, it just seemed like someone who clearly has like something out against Betty for whatever reason. So they thought it was a relationship killing. So now investigators look at Alan, and Alan is finally brought in for a formal interview. So Alan does provide a detailed account of where he was when Betty was murdered. So as we mentioned, Alan was leaving to go to Minnesota for a business trip. And like we said before, Betty didn't like how much he traveled and like she was just struggling with him being gone a lot while she is working and raising two children. So Alan tells investigators that Betty had been suffering from postpartum depression and that she was on medication for it. He also said the depression had put a strain on their relationship, and Betty was also worried that she was pregnant again. So when Alan left, he said that he would call and check in on her. So he had breakfast with Betty and then he left. And after work, he went with a colleague to the airport and flew to Minneapolis, St. Paul. So he did have his hotel receipt and his plane tickets, so they do have evidence of where he was this whole time. But with the timeline, it is still possible that he could have killed her, cleaned up, and then left on his business trip. But Elisa was with the Montgomerys during this time, so she was safe. But why would he leave Bethany alone in her crib for so long? So it's like you would think if you were going to do this to your wife, that you would make sure your baby was
Mm-hmm.
taken care of, and not
Yeah, you're
just
not
left
just gonna
alone.
leave. Yeah.
Because who knows how long it would take for Betty to be found. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
can't ensure that your daughter's going to be alive by the time someone finds her.
Yeah.
Police also thought that Alan's demeanor was like a little off and a bit emotionless. So they tried to pry and see if he had any motive, like did he have any affairs or anything like that, and Alan said no. They also asked him to take a polygraph to confirm everything he said. So he did agree to take it the next day and also agreed to give fingerprints. But the next day, Alan did call the police back and say that he actually lied about having an affair. So he said he had been having an affair with Candy Montgomery. So he did say it ended 8 months earlier in October. So now Alan takes the polygraph and he does pass when asked if he killed Betty. So police also looked into Alan hiring someone to murder Betty because we know that he wasn't, physically there. But it didn't really add up because, like we mentioned earlier, a murder for hire wouldn't be as like messy and brutal. It's like they're coming in to do a job, however horrific it is, but they're coming in to murder someone and leave and not get caught. They're not going to hit someone with an axe over 40 times. Like that's just
Yeah, they're like a hired trained professional who's gonna
yeah.
come in and be like in and out, you know?
Yeah. So police did rule out Alan as a suspect, but now they're turning their attention back to Candy again. So Candy is brought in for a second interview. So they ask her about the affair, and she does admit to it. Candy said that she approached Alan about the affair, and they negotiated terms because Candy didn't want a divorce, and neither did Alan. So they set up this like elaborate rule system. So the rules were that they would not get attached, the costs of the affair would be shared equally, and they would meet on work days when their spouses were at work. So it's like they're trying very hard to keep this a very strict arrangement, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that like their spouses don't find out. So they would go to the Como Hotel, and they started the affair in mid-December of 1978, and Betty was pregnant when it started. So it did last for about a year, and they would meet once every 2 weeks. And eventually, Alan wanted to end it in October of 1979. So one day, Betty had tried to initiate sex with Alan, but he had been with Candy earlier that day, so he could not perform. So Betty was feeling very insecure, and Alan felt very guilty. And so he was seeming like he wanted to end the affair, but Candy did not want to. Candy did say that after a while, they mutually decided to end the affair. However, it is speculated that Candy was still developing feelings and did not want to end it. So she's like, I kind of got in over my head with this affair where we said it was just going to be strictly this affair, but now she's having feelings for Alan.
Yeah, and like the book heavily went into that of like she didn't really want to end the affair, like she wanted
Hmm.
to keep it going, but like Alan clearly was like not into
Yeah.
it anymore, and it was like Alan didn't have any feelings for her. It was literally just like,
Hmm.
and like they said sometimes like when they met, they didn't even necessarily like have sex. Like sometimes they would just talk. It was almost like this
Yeah.
like weird companionship
Hmm.
kind of thing. It was very weird.
Yeah. So, again, according to the Evidence of Love book, Candy started an affair with another man soon after her and Alan ended things. So, Alan and Betty went through marriage encounters at their church. So, that was like a program that was supposed to strengthen their relationship, and it did seem to be working well for them. Alan said, like, their marriage was working on, like, becoming the strongest it had ever been. Like, it was successful for them. So, as with before, like they don't really have any evidence on Candy, so they let her go. So, investigator Defebaugh looks at Candy's fingerprints compared to the fingerprints at this scene, and he does see some similarities. They do have several points of comparison because remember, this is before things were just electronically, scanned and compared. Like you have people who are actually like looking at them to compare fingerprints.
Hmm.
So they do take the fingerprints to the fingerprint expert after Defibaw's like, yeah, I see some similarities here. And the expert did find more than enough matching characteristics and confirmed that the prints from Candy's right thumb matched the bloody thumbprint. So now Candy is the person of interest in this murder. And other evidence kind of starts to fall into place as well. So the bloody footprints appear to be the same size as Candy's foot. So they do now have evidence of Candy at the scene, plus by her own admission, Candy being the last person to see Betty alive. And now with this affair, they also have a solid motive. So they think that Candy was trying to get rid of Betty so that she could be with Alan. Because remember, he is trying to end the affair and she does not want to. So in her
Hmm.
mind, it's like, well, if Betty's not here, then I can have Alan. And someone at Bible school also recalled that when Candy came back from getting the bathing suit, that she had different clothes and shoes on. She said she did remember it because she was wearing a sweater when she came back, and she thought that she must be so hot because remember it's June, so come back wearing
It's
a
June in
sweater.
Texas.
Yeah, and you're like,
Like,
she's
it's
got to
hot.
be sweating in there. But she like remembered for that reason that she was in different clothes because she's like, why is she wearing a sweater? So now at this point, Candy lawyers up. So Don Crowder had gone to church with Candy and agreed to be her lawyer. And Don was a civil attorney who had never tried a criminal case. And Robert Udishin, his law partner, was just 3 years out of law school. So, maybe not the pair you're looking for when you're the prime suspect in a murder, but that's who you're going with. So Candy told Don and Robert the same story she told police, and police wanted to do a polygraph, but her attorneys said no. On June 27th, 1980, police issued an arrest warrant for Candy Montgomery. So Candy and her attorneys arranged for her to turn herself in. So they had Detective Defibaugh identify her, handcuff her, and read her rights on camera. And when the deputies strip searched her, they found a lot of bruises on Candy. Her left middle toe also had a large gash on it, like it had been cut. So Betty's family was confused of like how this could possibly happen because like Candy was close friends with Betty. She had Elisa like with her, like she had her daughter with her at church. She knew that Bethany was with Betty and that Bethany would be in the house alone. So they just can't believe that Candy would do something like this.
Hmm.
Also, want to note here that one source said that Bethany was 6 months old at the time, but another source said that she was born in July of 1979, so she would have been 11 months old. So, just want to put that out there. Obviously, she was very young, like she was an infant, but not sure of exactly how old she was at the time of Betty's death.
Yeah, not sure how it lined up. Also, in the book, I just kind of want to point out too that they played heavily into the whole candy of it all. It was a very 80s book where they're kind of taking some liberties, and then they're like, oh, and when Alan called Candy, she was like, "Where are you?" Because she was like, "Oh, well, Alan will come home and find Bethany, so it'll be fine because she'll only be
Hmm.
alone for like, which still, even if he gets off at 4:30, like that's like 8 hours." But
Right?
yeah, just weird. It was weird.
Yeah. I don't love an old true crime book where they make up conversations
Oh, and this was
from
that
real
book.
people. Yeah.
That was this book. That's why
Yeah.
I read a whole book and we're just on one episode because I was like, I don't think I can trust half of this information.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
Candy Montgomery was the other person who helped with information from this book in case no one had picked
Hmm.
up on that yet. So I was like, Alan and Candy, the people having an
Yeah.
affair of the murdered woman. Okay, I don't know if I trust these people.
Yeah. You're like, I don't know if this is the best source material for this, so we'll take what we can from this. And
Take it
obviously, we
all with a
had
grain of salt.
many other sources as well.
Yeah.
So who is Candy Montgomery? Candace Lynn Wheeler was born on November 15th, 1949. Her father was in the Army and was a radar technician who spent 20 years after World War II just moving from base to base. They did move every like 2 or 3 years. So Candy and her sister Joy attended like 6 to 7 schools before graduating. So they lived in San Antonio. They spent 3 years in France. They lived in Virginia, El Paso, West Germany, Washington, D.C., and Maryland. And as Candy grew into a teenager, her and her mom did become estranged, and Candy ran away at 14 years old with her best friend who had been in a fight with her father. They were found the next day. So Candy did not like going to school very much, likely due to moving around a lot. I mean, it's really hard to kind of establish yourself somewhere and like build
Hmm.
that friend group when you're in like seven schools before you graduate.
Also, school systems are so different too on like
Yeah.
requirements. Like Kevin talks about that because he moved like his senior year to a different state and he was like, well, everything I had to do in Connecticut, like I basically had all the qualifications to like graduate in Maryland. So I was just
Hmm.
taking like guitar class
Yeah.
in my senior year. It was like all these bullshit classes because it was like most of the requirements like had been met.
Or you had the opposite where you're like, oh, I haven't met any requirements and now I have to like
Yeah.
stack all these things to try to graduate on
Or
time.
you're
And
like, oh, we're learning about what I learned about last year, or
yeah.
I'm behind because I haven't learned this part. You know, it's like, it's very
Hmm.
hard when it's like not like consistent curriculum
Yes.
and stuff. So you're just like, how do you even get an education when you move around that much? Like,
Yeah, definitely. So Candy eventually moved out of her parents' house and got a secretarial job at the El Paso Times, and then eventually started working as a secretary to an owner of a furniture manufacturing plant. So Candy met Pat Montgomery in El Paso. So Pat was working in the lab at Texas Instruments in Dallas and was an electrical engineer. So Pat had taken a week off of work to go to Arizona to fish with his father, and he stopped in El Paso on the way back, and his mom said that she had a girl she wanted him to meet, and her name was Candy Wheeler. So Pat and Candy went on a date, and they both actually described it as kind of dull. But Pat did end up asking Candy on a second date. But the second date also did not go very well because they got lost in the sand dunes. So Candy was complaining about sand in her pants. But Pat asked her if they could make it.
sorry, just the way you said it. Sand in her pants.
Like I'm just
It
like
is so funny, like when you say it. Also, I
Candy
looked it up.
sand in her pants.
Can officially confirm Texas Instrument is the calculator. They just do other stuff as well.
Okay,
So,
cool. Good to know. Thank you.
yeah, got you.
So after this second bad sand in the pants date, Pat asked Candy if they could make it 3 days in a row. So she told him to call, but never answer. So once Pat went back to Dallas, he sent her flowers with a note that said, "Hope you got the sand out of your pants." And Candy was touched by this, and she found the Texas Instruments phone number and called him. So Pat ended up coming back to El Paso when his uncle died in July of 1970. He called up Candy and they walked around for several hours at a park. And Pat did start to grow more fond of Candy, and she eventually started to find Pat clever and cute. So it just kind of was a slow burn here. So Pat took Candy home. They agreed to write and they did share a kiss before he left. Pat went back to Dallas, but eventually came back to visit Candy. And 2 months into dating, Pat proposed. So they got married at the earliest date at Trinity Presbyterian Church, and Candy moved to Dallas and they settled into married life. So they really struggled that first year. Pat's schedule was crazy, and Candy really struggled to make friends. And Pat ended up getting a leave of absence to finish his degree at the University of Colorado. So they moved to Boulder, and Candy was also unhappy here. But Pat and Candy did have a baby girl, Jenny, in September of 1972. By 1973, they moved back to Dallas, and Pat was working on Texas Instruments' top secret military radar project, which is what I read earlier when I was like, the calculator company? But I guess it makes sense that, it's all
Yeah,
math related.
hold on, I have their Wikipedia pulled
Oh,
up and
yes.
it's their um the company's focus is on developing analog chips and embedded processors.
Hmm.
So I guess they could probably make stuff for the military that's like
Yeah.
encrypted and embedded and stuff like that. But it says
Yeah.
they do analog electronics, calculators, digital signal processors, digital light processors, integrated circuits, stuff
Okay.
way above
Hmm.
my knowledge.
Right. Definitely makes sense though. And I'm
So
just like, they just make calculators. What do you mean they do other
yeah.
stuff too?
I know it's like a top secret military project. What are you talking about?
I guess, that it adds up. Pun not intended.
All right, in the show right there. I'm just kidding.
Yep. Can't top that. Okay. So the Montgomerys bought a house in Plano, which is a suburb of Dallas, and they did have a second baby, Ian, in October of 1974. So Candy was happy having a boy and a girl, so she got her tubes tied, and the Montgomerys started going to church for the first time. So Pat made a great salary, and Candy could be a stay-at-home wife, but she did soon get bored. For that reason, she started volunteering at the church in every way she could, and this is how she met a lot of couples in the area, including Alan and Betty Gore. So now that we have a little background on Candy, we're going to go back to 1980. Candy is now appearing to have motive and opportunity, plus the fingerprint at the house. Kind of seems like a solid case. The media did go wild over this, and a judge did have to try and put a gag order in place. So the whole world knew about Alan and Candy's affair. And 4 months after Betty's death, Candy stands trial for murder. So as the trial starts, they find out what Candy's defense is going to be. So Dawn says that Candy did kill Betty with an axe, but she did it in self-defense. And Ron said basically like the whole courtroom just gasped when Dawn said that because you're just like, what are you even
What?
talking about?
Like you're just admitting to killing her and you're just gonna go self-defense
Yes,
when it's
self-defense with an axe 41 times. So,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So Richard said like he couldn't believe it at all because Betty was never violent. And again, like hitting someone 41 times with an axe, you cannot claim self-defense. Like after the first few, the threat is neutralized. There is no need to continue.
Yeah.
So the prosecution details all of the evidence they found in the house. So the blood, the fingerprints, the shoe print, and the fact that Candy used the shower to clean up before leaving. And Detective Defebaugh felt like this was a slam dunk case. Like you have so much evidence, so much motive. She says, yes, I did
Especially
it.
yeah, especially for like the 80s where you're like
Yeah.
this is like really like we didn't have DNA back then. And
Hmm.
also like the fingerprint like match was from like a picture of the fingerprint because they tried to lift it and they just like
Hmm.
couldn't because they didn't know what they were doing back in 1980.
Yeah.
But it was still like for that day it was like this is very advanced like evidence
Hmm.
we have. Like this is a slam dunk.
Yeah. So Alan Gore did testify. He kind of came off as like robotic and lacking emotion, but it does kind of seem like this is just who he was as a person. I mean, he was also a mathematician. Like maybe he's just
Yeah.
that's
He
just
also
his.
grew up like from his story, like he started working at 10. Like he would
Yeah,
choose not to go hang out with like friends or go to the movies. Like he just wanted to work. Like it just kind of seemed like that's who he was. Like it wasn't
yeah.
anything like again like damning him or anything. It's like this is just who he is.
Like this is just his personality and like how he presents. So when it was the defense's turn, they called their first witness to the stand, Candy. So she told her version of the events. She said that Betty had confronted Candy about her affair with Alan. She said Betty then went out to the garage and got an axe and shoved her in the utility room, saying that she can't have Alan. So Candy said she just kept repeating that the affair was over and she didn't want him. And she says that Betty is now swinging the axe at her and they're fighting over it. And Candy says this is where her toe got cut because the axe fell. She said she got the axe away from Betty and that's when she hits Betty. Candy says that she tries to run, but that Betty just kept like getting up and preventing her from leaving. Candy said she's saying like, stop this, and that Betty told her to shush and put her finger up to her mouth, and that this just triggered something in Candy, and Candy began hitting her over and over again, and she said she just kept hitting her until she was too tired to swing the axe anymore.
Yeah. So it was basically like if anyone's watched Pretty Little Liars at the end, how they go like shh
Mm-hmm.
with their finger up, that's what Betty did. And somehow this sent her into a blind rage, which I feel like
Mm-hmm.
is a very common gesture that is made
Yeah.
in life, in probably Bible school with children around. So I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah. But that was it. That was the triggering event. So this kind of sounds like a bad horror movie. And if this is the case, let's give Candy the benefit of the doubt. If this is the case, why would you clean up, return to Vacation Bible School, not call the police, not do anything? So the prosecution tries to poke holes in Candy's story, but she remains calm and consistent. And after Candy steps down, the defense calls church members as character witnesses and a psychiatrist named Dr. Faison. So Dr. Faison was there to explain the overkill part of this murder. He said that she suffered from a dissociative reaction, that she was attacked and her adrenaline was pumping, and she just disassociated from what was happening. Dr. Faison also put Candy under hypnosis. Again, this is a very 80s trial, and learned
So 80s.
so 80s, and learned about a deep-seated emotional trigger. So Dr. Faison said he uncovered a subconscious memory from Candy's childhood, and when she was 4, she took a jar, broke it, and glass flew up and hit Candy in the head. She started bleeding and screaming, and her mother shushed her with her finger up to her mouth. And the mother said, "What will people think of you screaming?" So according to this quote unquote Dr. Faison, when
Yeah.
Betty shushed Candy, this triggered that subconscious memory and brought forth this anger.
My thing with the subconscious memory, when I heard this, I was like, okay, maybe her mom like had abused her, or you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
thought this was gonna be someone was like coming into her bedroom, abusing her, told her to shush, and this was this deep. But I'm like, you broke a jar and it hit your face, and your mom told you to stop screaming so people didn't
Mm-hmm.
think you were dying.
Yeah.
And this is your explanation for
Yeah.
stabbing a woman 41 times with an axe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
hmm yep. Okay. So after a week of testimony, both sides rested and the jury deliberates. So the jury comes back with a verdict in just a few hours, and they found her not guilty by reason of self-defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, let that sink in. Yeah. So Ron said everyone in the courtroom was in disbelief, as I'm sure everyone listening is if you are not familiar with this story. He said even the defense attorney seemed to be in disbelief. He's like, I did not think this shit was gonna
I
work. I
mean,
am
he's also a
shocked.
civil attorney and his partner is 3 years out of law school, and they're like, that
Yeah,
shit worked.
right.
Wow.
Like, oh, it worked when we claimed self-defense with an axe murder for 41 stabs. Crazy.
I bet they honestly thought they could do anything after that.
Yeah, yeah. So after the trial, Candy tried to attempt to go back to a normal life, but obviously the town was outraged. People would say things to her in public. Poems were written and sent to her lawyers. Like, people are just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, so 8 days after the verdict, Candy, Pat, and the children left Dallas and moved to Georgia. So Candy and Pat did eventually get divorced, and she went back to school and became a counselor.
I also read somewhere else that she was a mental health like therapist, which is kind of
I
terrifying.
I I have no words.
Yeah.
Yes. So she goes by Candace Wheeler now. So if you are looking for a therapist and you come across that name, maybe keep scrolling. Um, so within months of the verdict, Alan moved states and got remarried. And remember that the trial was 4 months after Betty's murder.
So like within a year of your wife being murdered by the woman you had an affair with,
Mm-hmm.
because you know what? Candy herself said she killed her. So I'm not
Yeah,
even gonna like, there's no alleged here. Candy said she did
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
You get remarried?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, such 80s shit. I mean, it's still like kind of today shit too,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
So obviously this put a lot of like conflict between Alan and Betty's family for a few years because they're like, what do you mean you just got remarried after Betty was so brutally murdered by your girlfriend? But Alan has since gotten divorced. Elisa and Bethany went to live with Betty's family, and they were raised in Kansas by Betty's parents. They both grew up to have great families and great professional lives, and Ron said he feels like their kids are his grandkids. This crime has now inspired two fictionalized series, Candy starring Jessica Biel and Love and Death featuring Elizabeth Olsen. So,
Yeah.
wow.
I also
Wow.
never found out why Elisa and Bethany was raised by Betty's
I was
parents
wondering
and
about
not
that.
Alan. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like, did Alan not want to raise them, or did her parents like step in and be like, "You're not fit to raise them, and we're going to," and he just said, "Okay."
I
Yeah, I have a lot of
have
questions about that
no
too.
clue. I couldn't find anything about that. Why? Nothing.
Or I
I don't
wonder
know,
if
but
it could be like his new wife like didn't want the kids around, and then by
yeah,
the
I
time he
mean
got
that could
divorced, it's
happen.
like, no, we already have this stable
It's
life
already
for them here.
established. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a speculation. That is in no way a
Yeah. I have no idea
yeah.
why that happened the way it did. But once I started doing this and realized it was a big case and saw about, I remember when Candy came out with Jessica Biel like as Candy.
Hmm.
I never watched it, but now I want to
Yeah, I haven't
watch
seen it
this
either.
and Love and Death with Elizabeth
Hmm.
Olsen, which I'm like, mm, like Jessica Biel as Candy. At least they made her look like Candy Montgomery. But I've seen some clips from Love and Death, and I'm like, okay, we can't pretend like Candy look like Elizabeth Olsen now. Let's be fucking for real, okay?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you got to put no, 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 no.
Yeah, that is the horrific murder of Betty Gore by Candy Montgomery by her own admission, even though
She said it.
she was found not guilty by reason of
It just
self-defense, which is
it does
just
not make sense to me
self-defense.
because even Alan is saying like, yeah, she was in a bad mood when she got up, but she was freaking out about stuff. If Betty was going to confront Candy, why would she do it with her less than 1 year old daughter in the house?
Hmm.
Why would she do it when she knows Elisa had spent the night before with Candy and
Yes.
Candy had taken her to vacation Bible school? So she's like
Hmm.
under Candy's care. Like, none of that makes sense to me. I don't
No.
understand, like, maybe why this started. I don't know if maybe Candy had these feelings for Alan and was kind of lashing out. Like, I don't know what
Hmm.
happened, but I don't necessarily know if I believe that Betty would have confronted Candy with her daughter in the house.
Yeah. Like that doesn't track for me either. But even if she did, and let's say we had this scuffle with the axe, nah, girl, like you are still responsible for what happened here.
You could literally stand there and call the police and be like, this is what happened.
Yeah. Like you
Then
said
I maybe
that,
would have believed your self-defense thing
yeah, yeah.
versus just trying to cover it up.
Because when you cover it up, that's a clear indication that you're like, oh, I fucked up and I'm trying to,
She went
you
and took a
know,
shower in the bathroom,
yeah.
changed clothes, and knew Bethany was in the house and just left.
Hmm. That's the thing too. Like, how is that not a separate charge? Because like you are no longer in this like psychotic rage. Like you've now just
Yeah.
abandoned this infant, like with her dead mother in the room. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
it's so
It's a
wild. I
lot.
cannot wrap my brain around this one. Like, how is that even? Like, how does a jury of 12 people hear this and go, "Yep, yep, that's
Makes
exactly what
sense.
happened. I'm with that." It's the 80s. Maybe they're all on cocaine. I don't know.
I don't know, man. 80s were a wild time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on this case. That being said, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is, and I touched on this a little bit in October's like Patreon bonus, is that I'm getting into audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
Because originally, it was because I hadn't met my reading goal, but now I'm like really enjoying them in general. But
Hmm.
it originally was just going to be one of the audiobooks I listened to, and then I listened to another one that was also amazing. So I have two audiobook recommendations. I
Okay.
also really only do autobiography, memoir, nonfiction. I don't really
Uh-huh.
dabble in fiction too much unless I've already read it.
Hold on, I'm
But
going to save these. Continue.
okay, yes. So the first one I read that I absolutely loved is called The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. So she's Emily Gilmore in Gilmore Girls, but she's also the mom in Dirty Dancing.
Okay, okay.
Yes. So she reads it and she is just like such a badass. Like
I
I'm
love it.
obsessed with her and like her telling her story and just her little like comments she puts in and like the way she is and then like the way she like tells the story. I don't know. I was just obsessed. I was also towards the end of the book, I will give a trigger warning because like her TV husband in Gilmore Girls passed away and also her real husband passed
Mm,
away like within a couple
yeah.
years of each other.
Uh,
I was cooking dinner and sobbing, like
uh,
sobbing, listening to her talking to it. I don't know how she like got through it, but like reading it, I'm sure she had to do
yeah.
multiple takes, but just like so, like I don't know, she was just so like an icon before her times. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She's just so effortlessly cool. I don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
explain it.
Yeah.
It's just so good, and I love hearing her read it.
Love it.
Then the second one that I just finished, it was shorter, but it's called From Here to the Great Unknown. So it's Lisa Marie Presley's autobiography.
Oh,
But
okay.
basically, what happened is she asked her daughter, Riley Keough, to help her with the book, but she died while writing the book.
Mm,
So why I love the audiobook is because Lisa Marie had left voice notes of things she wanted to include in the book, and it puts those
mm.
voice notes in there.
Oh, wow, that's
So like
cool.
where it should be, and then Julia Roberts reads anything like she wrote.
Mm, hmm
And then Riley Keough also like reads her parts that she like contributed to the book because the book
hmm
wasn't like finished. So she'll like finish like the end of a chapter, which
Yeah,
again, heartbreaking. So much trauma
yeah,
in that poor family's life, but
definitely.
just the way like hearing it all like talk about it and just like also having those voice notes was like so cool in
Hmm
there, especially
Yeah,
like
that's really
knowing
cool.
it was something she intended to put in, but both of those books I was just captivated like the whole time. So,
Good to know. Good to know. I do have a long
that's
drive coming up this week, so I have bookmarked those
yeah.
so I can
Yeah.
like a good audiobook for a drive.
From Here to the Great Unknown is currently available on my Libby, at least. There was like no hold somehow.
Oh, I had to put a hold on it, but I think I'm like the first one, so it might become
Oh,
available.
yeah.
But the other one is available now. So,
I It's longer. I just loved it. I mean, also I'm just a huge like Gilmore Girls fan, but like just hearing her like talk about her life and be like, yeah, I
hmm
was on Broadway and yeah, I did this and that and just I don't know. Loved it. But I just if anyone has any like nonfiction, I'll even do like nonfiction. It doesn't have to be like memoir, autobiography,
hmm
but I love when it's like read
Yeah,
by the person. My next one up on the list is Bethany Joy Lenz's
it was really
book.
good.
Okay, so I have it currently on my phone
Oh,
to
very
start
nice.
next. So,
Yeah, let
um,
me know what you think about it because I also listened to the audiobook and I really liked it. And I mean, I'm sure I would have liked it like reading it as well, but I think she did an amazing job reading it. So,
yeah, I feel like she has a good like voice of like
hmm
she has a very listenable voice. It
Yes,
sounds like a
definitely.
weird thing to say, but yeah, if you have any recommendations, I have a few on hold, but I've just been really loving it because I do listen to a lot of podcasts, but like sometimes I'm kind of like, on
Yeah.
some of the podcasts, so it's nice to kind of like switch it up a
hmm
little bit. So,
Agreed.
yeah, so that is my perk of the week. If anyone has any recommendations, send them my way, or if you've listened to those and have like some input, like both of those for me are like you have to listen on audiobook. Like I
hmm
could not imagine either of them reading it,
Yeah.
you know? But anyway, so that's my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that this weekend we took the girls to their first UT basketball game, and they both had a very good time. I mean, the baby probably didn't give a shit, but she clapped every time Rocky Top played. So I'm like, all right, she's having a good time.
Yeah.
But like Millie loved it. Like she was just like enthralled, like the lights and the dancers and like Smokey and just everything was she was just all
Mm-hmm.
about it. So
Nice.
yeah, so it was a lot of fun. She had her little shaker, and so she would get excited every time they would play Rocky Top, and then Joey's over there just like clapping, and she lasted until like about 15 minutes left in the game, and then Joey was like, I am done. I have been sitting here for entirely too
Yeah.
long. I would like to go wiggle, please. So we left a little bit early, but they both did better than I expected them to. And Millie
Nice.
wants to know if we can go to a basketball game every day now. I was like, well, not every day, but we'll go again. So
That's a lot of basketball games,
yes,
but
yes. I mean, they pretty much play that often, but I don't know if we can make it that
that's
many.
true.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was just, it was a small team, and it was like a Saturday afternoon game, so there weren't like a lot of people there. So it was just kind of
Hmm.
a low key. We were gonna go to a Hornets game in January, so this was kind of our test run to see how they did. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I think we'll be good. So
Yeah. We'll be able
yeah,
to make it work.
yes. And then we went to Cruise Farm after and got pizza and ice cream. So win-win.
As always. I feel like they
Um,
must know you by name there.
I know, right? They have a pumpkin maple right now that is really
Oh, that
good.
sounds good. I
So,
was kind of sad when we went to dinner Friday and like the place does like different drinks of the month and I saw pumpkin spice espresso. So I was like, a pumpkin spice
mm.
espresso martini sounds delicious. And the girl was like, we're out of espresso. I was like,
Oh,
oh.
great.
But their drink of the month from last month was like an apple cider margarita and it was very good. It
That
tasted
sounds
just like
good.
apple juice. So very good.
Nice. Have you gotten a sugar cookie latte from Starbucks yet?
I have not,
I have not
and I need
either.
to.
Yeah,
I need to. I'm behind. I didn't even know they had their seasonal stuff out yet.
they
I did hear
do.
about that like bear cup that sold out and like did you hear about that?
Oh, no, I didn't hear about
It
that.
looks like, the honey that's like a bear.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cup that looks like that. And apparently it sold
Oh,
out so fast. And now people are trying to resell it for like $400.
that's insane. I'm gonna have to look that up later. I did not hear about that.
It's a cute cup, but it's not that cute.
Not worth that. Wow,
I
that's
could just
crazy.
empty my honey jar
I
and
know. I was
put
like,
my
I got
cream
one
in
right
it.
in there right now.
Yeah.
It's
But
almost empty. I'll just use that.
it's fine. But yeah. Well, anyway, if
Yes,
do you want to give us recommendations, tell us what your perk of the week is, all of that. You can do so on all the places, all the things, all of it's in the show notes, but the most important is patreon.com/caffeinated crimes, where we have, I think it's like 53, 54, too many bonuses this
a lot
point.
of bonuses.
And we have one every month, at least we try to. So,
Yes,
tune in and actually, let me see, what day is it? When you're listening, there'll be one out on Thursday, a little happy Thanksgiving gift. So if you're running a turkey trot, you can listen to us while you run your
perfect.
5K,
Love it.
or when you're cooking, or when you're sleeping in bed because you're not getting up. Any of those.
Whatever you're doing on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So, um, but yeah, that's patreon.com/caffeinated crimes.
Did you mention reviews?
No, I was letting you do
Okay.
that.
I my brain kind of shut off for a minute there. Well, I'm not gonna lie, what happened was you said Patreon and I thought about our Discord and I was like, Jamie messaged us on Discord and I did not respond. So I need to make sure to do that after we stop recording. And so my brain just went in that direction. So hi to you, Jamie. I'm also going to message you back right now. But also to everyone else, and also Jamie, if you want to, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You can, comment on the episodes, give us 5 stars. On YouTube, you can give us a thumbs up, leave us nice comments. We haven't gotten anything either way over there in a while, so
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet. I'll take it.
yeah, quiet is better on YouTube than the alternative.
Yeah.
Give us some positive feedback over there on
Yes.
YouTube. But yeah, it just helps us get, a little more visible, a little more seen. Our downloads have been very up this last month, so that's super exciting.
Yeah. Let us know how
Um,
you heard about us, how you came over here.
yeah, for sure.
And then, but yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. But in the meantime, have a cup of coffee.
That's not what you say. You didn't say go,
What?
right? Don't you say go? No, no, wait. You say go. Something's
I
something's
say go have
off.
a cup of coffee, and you say and don't commit a crime,
You
don't
didn't
you?
say go. You just said have a cup of coffee, right?
I didn't know this one word choice was so important.
I was like, wait,
But in the
something is off
meantime, go
here.
have a cup of coffee.
There we go. And don't commit a crime.